Hi, and welcome to another episode of the South Texas Power Lunch. I'm Matt Duke, managing attorney with the South Texas Business Lawyers. Today, we have Andrew Flippo on our podcast. Andrew is a local serial entrepreneur, as well as the chairman of SCORE here, the local chapter of SCORE, which is a great resource that you probably need to stay tuned to learn out more because it can help your business in a variety of ways. Let's tune in. Andrew, thanks so much for coming here today. We appreciate you coming on to our show to talk about all the great things you got going on.
Cool. Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
So tell everybody here, you're not new to San Antonio, but you've been here for a while, but a lot of people may not know you. Tell us about Andrew. Tell us about what brought him here to San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah, I was a government brat growing up, and I've been all over the world. I've been just kind of finding a place at home. You've got no roots anywhere. And after traveling every 3 years, it carries over even when you're no longer a part of government life. And so I did that to my kid for a while. I felt bad for it. And so she's finally like, the next place we go, we're going to stay. And I said, okay, I promise we'll stay. And so that's how we started looking around, looking at the different states, looking at education, looking at all that. And we wanted to go somewhere where they could give her a good future to finish up her high school years. And then for the youngest one to kind of get through. And so through sheer process of elimination, every single state we looked at, and Texas was one of the finalists. And then we saw Round Rock, we saw Austin. As much as it might be an all right city, I didn't like the infrastructure, honestly, the roads. And so I was like, I'm going to go to San Antonio, and everything's just laid out better. And so that's kind of where we ended up. And we love it here. We're happy to set roots here.
Yeah, Austin's confusing. San Antonio, it's grid and circles.
Yep.
I mean, if you know grids and circles, you can pretty much get anywhere in this town. Just wait till you hit a circle and then hop on it. Well, tell everybody about your entrepreneurial journey because you have a very rich entrepreneurial background. Walk us through that.
Yeah, I started out. I always had an issue with authority. I guess if I didn't have an issue, I would have been a Marine. But because I was in Quantico growing up,
there you go.
So I lived next to Quantico. But I actually wanted to work for IBM from the early days. From middle school on, I wanted to know everything about computers, and I wanted to dig in. And then I was kind of heading towards that. I was going to college, doing the thing. And then I said, well, what can we do while we go through college? So a buddy and I got together and we set up an internet cafe back when that was a thing.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So my first company was an internet cafe, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And I went out and got a business loan from the SBA, and I ended up getting the money, and I started looking around for a place. And then looks like no one wants to give commercial space to a 20-year-old with no background and no history and no credibility.
Talking about computers so kids can come play StarCraft. I remember doing that.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, that Counter-Strike.
StarCraft back in the day.
And we could pay people would pay for time, and best of both worlds.
I loved it. Man, that's back to memory lane. That's early 90s, right?
For me, it was just at the turn of the century. So 2001.
Got it. Okay.
It was still a thing. And because I had just come back from Germany, and that was internet cafes were huge in Germany back then.
Okay.
So I was trying to, lap onto that. And so that kind of failed out. And then I kind of went into the next one, and I set up a dog kennel, and I got most of my funding for that. That was a big dollar. And then I just, kind of went in from there and started doing different businesses. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. I had a company we sold comm gear to law enforcement and heavy industries.
Okay.
So all that behind the earpieces, Motorola radios, all that stuff. We were e-commerce back when e-commerce was in the early days, and we did really well there. And that's kind of where our first successful exit was. And then in the last 10 years, I've been doing tech startups. So I'll come in as the founding member, not the founder, but I'll be the guy who executes the vision. And that's where my specialty came in. So I would create the culture and hire all them people and set up all the processes and make the company work. And then I would take it to revenue, and then I would leave, and then I'd go into the next one.
Right.
And so it's kind of a serial thing because I get bored after a while. Yes.
So more of a COO type role to be able to help with the actual execution.
Yeah. And so I loved that for a long time. And then I turned out, I in between that time, I did end up joining IBM. I was a PeopleSoft developer and consultant for them. And so during that time, I had to go. That was back when outsourcing became all the rage. And so as a developer, my job got outsourced, and I either had to become management or I'd get let go.
Right.
So I became management. And I started doing project management work early on in my career. And that kind of carried through because all the startups I did were tech. And then I ended up running the tech teams. And then eventually I set up my own mobile app development company, and that's still running today. And that sucker is, we focus on startups.
Okay.
So people who want to put an app together, I put it together.
So you do the development side of all that.
Yeah, we'll do all the
Nice.
development side of that.
Okay.
So, and then, occasionally, and then I guess the most recent one I wanted to get into something. I got tired of starting over every single time.
Right.
And so I took a break and I took an established business and positioned it so it could scale and rubber stamp across the country.
Nice.
So that was the last one. And now, and then I went into nonprofit work and I started getting into nonprofits to kind of educate the next generation of business owners.
So let's talk a little bit about the nonprofit that you're a part of, and then I want to come back to your entrepreneurial journey. Tell us about SCORE here in San Antonio. What does it do?
Yeah.
Many people don't. I'm familiar with the resource going actually all the way back to the early 2000s when I utilized SCORE here for a business plan. Before I went and got my MBA and law degree, I didn't even know finance at that time. Great organization, but many people don't know about the resource that's out there. Tell us about SCORE.
Yeah, SCORE. I joined SCORE about 4 years ago. I had used it for a marketing plan back in the day. And then I had another one. I didn't have the best experience with it. And I said, you know what, I can do this better. And so when I moved here to San Antonio, I joined up and I've been mentoring now for a couple of years. And basically we offer one-on-one coaching. It's free. We handle any part of the life cycle of your business. We kind of help you through it. I had one earlier today where I actually helped a client at her business because she just moved locations. And then, there's a lot of free resources. We do free workshops and all of that. So it's a great place to go if you don't have the funds and you're trying to figure it out, or if you just need someone to bounce ideas off of, because that was my struggle growing up for at least that first decade. I didn't have anybody I could bounce ideas off of. My wife, she's not entrepreneurial minded. That's just not her. And it's okay. But you're not going to talk to your employees. You're not going to talk to your family because usually it's not a positive situation because they just don't understand what you're into. And so having somebody who's been there and done that, you can bounce ideas off of, has been really, really beneficial. And SCORE is a great place for that. And so last year I took over as chairman here in San Antonio. So now I'm running the San Antonio chapter for SCORE, just because we believe in the mission a lot. And we brought back in-person workshops after COVID and started doing a lot of that. We actually have one tomorrow.
Nice.
As well. But so we have them pretty regularly.
And this is it a part of the SBA, funded by SBA?
It's
relationship.
partially allocated funding by the SBA. So the SBA provides some money. And so we have obviously the partnership with them. With direct sister would be the SBDC.
Right.
So the two of us together, we're the outreach arm for the SBA. And then we're of course funded by elsewhere. Yeah. So by private sponsors and corporate sponsors, and we're national, 10,000 volunteers nationwide. So it doesn't matter what state you're in, you're got one around you somewhere.
I remember and it's still a really good tool. I haven't pushed anybody there, but they have a great business plan tool.
Yes.
Even when I went to my MBA, I remember I'm like, I'm going back to the SCORE, model to grab some of that sort of stuff there, just even from a financial modeling and some other stuff. It was a great tool.
They've got a lot of free templates for everything from your financial forecast, your business plan, your BMCs, business canvas. They've got, it's got a nice rich resource that's all available for anybody who wants it.
Right. And the rigor that it forces you to do gets you to ask a lot of questions that you probably, for somebody that's a first time business owner. And, it's interesting in the tech startup space and the venture backed companies where people have a solution, right? They don't usually have a business background. And, they know lean canvassing with regard to the business model, but not business. And it's something that I know a lot of people struggle with, is the nuts and bolts of, business. And
it's all thumb in the air for them. And it's hard for them to take that and synthesize it into paper.
Yeah. I've got a client literally just sent me an email that's like, hey, how do I update my cap table? And I'm like, well, it's just numbers, Excel spreadsheet. We're happy to help on that one. But again, there's a lot of things that an entrepreneur that doesn't have a business background, unfortunately, I just go through the school of hard knocks to figure out. And the SCORE tools, I've utilized those myself. They're great tools that are out there. I kind of want to know a little bit more about just why, the entrepreneurial mentality, because you clearly have that.
Yeah.
I'm that kind of person too. I don't really want to work for someone else. I like to work with people and be a part of things that grow. But tell me about how, for somebody that was in the military, system, as far as having to bounce around, right?
Yeah. Government. Yeah.
Government, right? That's very structured, very authoritarian structure.
Yeah.
Why do you think you have such a strong entrepreneurial background or mentality?
I think it comes from a couple of different places. My grandfather is I say he's a psychopath. He has no fear gene. Like he will do anything. He was 78 years old. He was doing front flips off of South Pier in South Beach, Miami.
Oh, okay.
So he's just that kind of guy.
Right.
Have you ever seen the movie Secondhand Lions?
Yes.
He's one of those guys.
Okay.
Right. He'll fly the airplane through the barn.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of guy he is. We used to go out to the Bahamas, and he would spear fish and put it in his mouth, and a barracuda would take it from his mouth.
Oh,
so
okay.
Very rich life. So I grew up around that, and so I also didn't have a like my level of risk tolerance is much higher than a lot of people's. So I wouldn't mind just throwing my hat in the ring, and then you just eventually trust yourself that you'll get through whatever it is. So whatever I'd come across, I had that confidence that I'll figure it out. But it's a good problem to have to figure out, right? So if someone's business gets growing and they're overwhelmed, well, that's a good problem to have because you got all these sales coming in, you just figure it out. Right. And so with that kind of belief, I could feel like I could just do anything that I wanted to do. And since I didn't want to work for other people and I wanted flexibility, I tried working for other people. And then, at some point I learned the business that I'm in so well that I just think I can do it better than them because you find the holes. And a lot of small businesses, and this is a big thing that I always harp on, is that once their business is up and running, they're successful and they're growing a little bit, they stop reiterating over their actual business. They don't make it better to make it so they can either scale or just make it easier on themselves. They just do the same thing they've done for 15 years or 10 years. It's a routine. Yep. And so of course there's going to be holes as technology goes on, as time goes on, and they don't ever address that. And so I came up with a pathway to do that I kind of talk about a lot, which I call the task of 7. And it's essentially, everybody talks about how you have to work 80 hours a week to make a great business successful. And it's true, you get there really fast that way, but you can still get there if you're going slower. And so if you're working a full-time job, you can't work 80 hours a week on your business.
Right.
So the task of 7 was built for those, what's the minimum I can do that's still making me move forward, so that on days I don't have much time, I can just do this.
Right.
And so it's 3 things that are revenue producing, 3 things that are business improving, and then 2 things that are self-improving. So if you are a business owner, this is what other business owners don't do, is they don't go back and learn more about their industry at the changing times of their industry. They don't learn more about business. They got it up and running and it's good to go. And that'll carry them for as long as they can. But then when it falls apart, it really falls apart. And so the task 7 is kind of there to 1, make continual momentum, and 2, to kind of remind yourself to reinvest in yourself and in your company.
Well, and that kind of gets to, Jim Collins and, some of his books where he looked at businesses that took just the consistent march every single day, not too fast, not too slow, but just the consistent march, and their longevity and return was much greater than those that just went, on a complete sprint, which, there are places for that. I always tell people, from a tech standpoint, if you're looking to be leading edge and you've got, X amount of dollars, you better start get going, and it's a sprint. And you're constantly just trying to refuel the sprint. But for a lot of businesses though, they don't need that. And a sprint can run them right into a dead end that they wouldn't have gotten into if they'd have just taken the time to kind of go on that consistent march. Going with your experience in so many different entrepreneurial ventures, what was a big lesson early on that you, kind of, as you look back, go, yeah, that was one of the first big lessons I learned, from that?
Yeah, there's so many of those. One of them is like who your team is matters. Okay. It's really important, whether you have anybody or it's just you by yourself. 1, your team builds you credibility, especially if you're going after VC money. Mm-hmm. Your team matters, because it's not just, do you have a great idea, but can you execute the idea?
Yeah, and we'll bet on the jockey more than the horse.
Exactly. And so if you've got a good team around you with some experience, that's good. If you don't have that, you're a small business, understood. You're probably getting an SBA loan anyway, so it's a little bit different. But having, putting the money where it matters. So getting the right lawyer, getting the right accountant, getting those core pieces together. And I don't have the time to learn that stuff. Right. And as much as I'm going to try to do as much as I can to keep costs down, know where your limits are, and then just commit that money to it. As much as it might hurt early on, it's going to save you down the road. And then the other warning, I guess you could say, is beware of partnerships. Tell
me more about that.
There was a startup that I had, and one founder was fantastic. He was a real estate developer. He was really, really good, sharp guy, really outgoing. He had a good vision. Then you had the guy who had the idea. He was a trust fund baby. He didn't have any effort of real work in his life. He tried to be a screenwriter for like 10 years in LA and failed. Like he just, one of those who never had purpose.
Right.
He had this idea. And then the other guy, he put it all together, and he put in $2.5 million to this project. And so the two of them together went off on it. And the one who was successful, his father-in-law said, don't have a partner. And he ignored him. And so they burned through all that money. I left about 3 years in because I saw where it was going. And then the moment I left, we had cultivated lenders into this program. And it's very hard to cultivate lenders to use a program outside of their own infrastructure.
Right.
And we were able to get over 300 of them and from different banks from around the country to be in this system. And the moment I left, he decided to charge them all like $1,000 a month, and they all left overnight. 3 years of work wiped out.
Yeah.
And then the company died like 2 years later. And so, that was where one partner knew, but then it just folded to the other one because of the personality. And so, if you don't have a clear vision, that's another really important lesson.
Mm-hmm.
If your vision's not very clear, then when you get into a meeting, someone will, dilute, oh, it'd be really cool if you did this. And then you think about it, and then you spend a month going after it, and you're like, no, that's not a good idea. Well, you just wasted a month and all that money.
Right.
And so what was it that I always said? And I just wrote this down. It was said, if you have a very clear vision, then your vision doesn't become someone else's vision. You measure their advice against your vision. Right. And there's a tight delineation there that you want to be focused on.
Yeah, the partnership thing is something we deal with a lot. And I always tell people somebody needs to have control, and it needs to be the one that I would say has the vision that's on there. Because so many times, people tell us, hey, I've got a partner or co-founder, we're 50-50. Mm-hmm. Great. So if you want to go left and he wants to go right, or she wants to go right, which direction do you go? Yeah. The answer is nowhere. Yeah. You really don't.
You got to have a deal breaker in there. Someone's got to be that third party, even if it's a coin flip. Like, it's got to just have something.
Yeah. Yeah. We, put in deadlock provisions and some process to work through those. Yeah. But, the other thing too is with regard to who has control of the vision, right? Somebody needs to have that and be committed to it, because again, there's dilution of a lot of things. And, most companies we deal with, and I'm sure you have this experience too, they may not have to fully pivot, but they're going to pivot to some degree from where the original vision and strategy was to what actually got them there.
Right. It's going to evolve.
It's 180. Right? Sometimes it's 20 degrees. Sometimes it's, 1 degree off, but it's usually some sort of, and if that person that ultimately is making control, not just from a corporate standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint, if they don't have that, that's the death of companies. Yeah. They're dead. They just die all the time in those situations.
What happened if YouTube didn't pivot? Right. Because they were a dating video site, dating video or Instagram. They were an alcohol, I think. Oh, I didn't know that. Instagram was originally like an alcohol, like you take pictures of the alcohol and that's what you're going to do. And then it kind of evolved into a social media thing. So it had a different purpose as well. But YouTube is the kind of the big one. Yeah. What happens if they hadn't pivoted? Like, where would we be today? Positive or negatively? Like, where would we be today? Yeah. Without YouTube. And, entire fortunes are made on that.
But again, who has control?
Who has control made that decision and made that pivot? Yeah.
Because with startups, and I've seen this a lot. You can sometimes trace it back to one pivotal decision. Mm-hmm. Either it was the end, and that one's easy to find. Yeah. Or, it was a success, and then there may be a lot of the decisions, maybe the critical one is not there.
And you can see that with Microsoft and Apple. Yeah. Microsoft came with the tablet first. They were the originals that I know of, and they couldn't get a market for it. Right. And then Apple came in, repackaged it, and leveraged it to get the iPad, and the iPad is synonymous with iPad.
Now nobody wants a Surface,
right? Exactly, except for me.
There you go. We're Apple people and remarkable people here. So you had discussed. I know you're writing a book, and if you want to talk a lot about that or not much, you just let me know. But we were talking earlier about this kind of napkin to execution concept. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So building a business is more than one book. I mean, it just is. And so I broke it up into, I think, 7 or 8 books. And it's basically every stage of your business, from your ideation stage, which is the book we're finishing now. And then we're going to go into the design phase where you work on your branding and your messaging, and then also a lot of the other core foundational pieces of your business.
Right.
And then we go into the setup and the go live, and then, the growth, the scale, the exit. And then I'm also going to do one off on nonprofits as well, because SCORE is the nonprofit I'm part of, but I actually started my own nonprofit last year.
Okay.
So I run that one. And so all of those things are going to be in a book. And what I wanted was kind of a workbook that could have action steps. So, we're going to show you how to do this, and these are the steps you take. And then here's where you can kind of practice that.
Right.
And so it's kind of a exercise as well as, because the last thing I like is going into workshops and you hear all this abstract high level stuff and you don't actually have any details on how you actually do anything. And so you walk away feeling good, and then you get home and you're like, well, now what?
Right.
Right. And I don't want that now what. I want to solve that now what.
You get really, really excited, but you can't walk anywhere because you don't know where to go.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so I want to provide that path on where to go. So I did a workshop series last fall with SCORE, and we did a kind of rudimentary initial material with it all. And then I put all that together and all the results from that, and I'm putting it into these books.
Nice.
So we'll have one come out next week or next month. And then we'll get the next book out hopefully before the end of the year.
So in mentoring and being involved in so many businesses, what do you see as one of the top, I guess, gaps in knowledge that entrepreneurs have? It's kind of a blind spot for them, I guess. I'm sure it's pretty consistent. Maybe through maybe a couple.
Blind spots. Well, the vision is still the number one thing. Someone comes to me and say, hey, I want to open a nail salon, or I want to open mobile detailing, or I want to open this or that. And it's like, okay, well, on its surface, it sounds like a clear vision. But ultimately, is it? Like, once you get into it, what are all the parameters that go around that, right? And so those are things that you're just like, well, I'll just wait for a phone call and then I'll figure it out. And like, no, you can figure out some of this stuff now.
Right.
The other part of it is it's so much easier today to open a business than it was ever in the past, because it's accessible. I mean, I think San Antonio or the state charges like $300 to file or something like that. I mean, if you do it on your own, which I don't recommend. I recommend getting a lawyer for it. But if you did want to do that, then do it. And you can at least get it going and get your EIN. But then on top of that, you've got all the resources in the world to kind of dip into. Now, I don't tell somebody to go to YouTube, watch a couple videos, and then go open a business. You need to go and get it from different sources, because there's a lot of influencers out there who don't know what they're talking about. And
especially legal ones.
Yes, especially the legal ones. Yeah. There's legal that. And then the other side of it is, the other scary side for me anyways, is the accounting side, because especially now running a nonprofit, you have to be very careful because you'll lose your exempt status. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very, very careful about the nonprofit work. If I don't apply the funds to the right spots and that kind of thing. So it's the same thing though, especially if someone wants to get funding for a loan, you've got to have your books in order. It doesn't cost that much to get somebody in to do it, set you up, right? At least get them to set you up right with a good chart of accounts and all that.
Right.
And these are just the skill gaps where they're like, well, I'll just do it on an Excel sheet and I'll deal with it later.
Right.
Yeah, but the later keeps you from growing faster because you're stressing about those kinds of things.
And most of the time I find, because I always tell people, you got to put a basic foundation in. Yeah. Organizational documents, complete organizational, not just the Secretary of State, especially if you have a partner or somebody else that's a part of it. You got to have your paperwork right, because that blows up things down the road when you are successful if it wasn't done right. And then the accounting thing. Most people are like, well, I just want to go make money.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there is their minimum foundation. It's like saying, I just want to go build a house, but I won't put the foundation down, but I'm going to start painting the walls. Yeah. And putting walls up. Okay, it'll fall down.
It's like painting the drywall before it's up on the wall.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can do it, but it's not going to last. It will fall down on you. It's just when, not if. Part of that.
I think now that I'm thinking about it, the number one thing that I tell people starting a new business that most people don't think about is credibility. Mm-hmm. You need to be held as a credible business as soon as possible.
That's good.
And so what do you do in order to get that polish immediately? Yeah. And so you've got to do the things where I don't want to see, I'm a house painter at gmail.com. Right. I want to see Bob at imahousepainter.com.
Yep.
Those little polishes, go get a logo, go get business cards, go get a flyer. I know all those things cost money, but I think you can start a business if you file yourself. If you file yourself and which, we've talked about that. But for under $1,000, you can build an entire business. And if you can't find $1,000 to build a business and look credible as a business,
Sure.
then you're not trying hard enough. Like it's
No, I mean, unfortunately, there is a minimum, to be able to get it so that way it's done right. I mean, my son has a pressure washer business. I mean, he was like, why do I have to do all this? I'm like, because, this is the way it works.
Yeah.
You have to set up a QuickBooks, because at the end of the day, you got to figure out how much profit did I make off of this? And then also the IRS wants to know how much money do you owe them?
Yeah.
Not just, your expenses and stuff. And it can be a lot for people. What are some of the workshops that SCORE offers that maybe people don't realize that can help with those blind spots?
Yeah. So we do about every quarter, we'll do a funding workshop. We'll actually have a bank come in. Tomorrow's will be Wallace, but we have a bunch of banks that come in, and then we'll talk, and I'll bring some alternative lenders as well. I usually talk about investors and crowdfunding and that kind of stuff. And then outside of that, we do workshops for me, I'm a little bit different. We have a bunch of online workshops that are pretty much like how to build a business plan, how to build a website and that kind of stuff. I want to do things that are more interested, more specific. So in June, I think we're running a manufacturing workshop. So if you ever want to get into manufacturing, that's the workshop you want to go to.
Got it.
We're bringing in people who've been in it for 30 years and can help you.
Now, is that all manufacturing or CPG based or
all manufacturing? I think is going to be what it's going to be. And then, we just did one a couple of weeks ago where how do you go from an employee to an employer, and what's that transition look like? What considerations do you have to make? Right. So things that are affecting people now that kind of prevent you from taking that step. Yeah. One way or the other, right? You realize you don't want to do it, or you just didn't know you didn't know. And then the other workshops, a lot of it is marketing and social media marketing and business plan and we're going to do a certification workshop. How do you get veteran or women certified or that kind of thing? So those are the kind of workshops that we'll do. How we can help you get to that next spot. And we're kind of expanding on that as we go. We've got some sponsors who want to talk about their stuff as well. And as long as they bring value to somebody, then that's what matters.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, let me leave you with this and I think I know what the answer is. I could write it down, but number one advice overall, that if somebody is looking to start a business, what do you give them?
Come up with a plan. You need to have a plan. Build a roadmap. Just put everything down on paper that you can think of. It doesn't have to be organized. Just slap it all down. And once you get it all out of your head and you're exhausted, then you know what you do. You can reorganize, you can prioritize, I need to get this, I need to do that. So without a plan and just going for it is not the way I would recommend, and you don't have to plan all day long. You just get your information out. And a lot of people, I can't even sleep at night if there's stuff going on in my head. I have to write it down on a list.
Right.
I just create all these lists of everything you can possibly think of. Once it's all out, it's on paper, it's real, it's a document.
Right.
And I recommend Post-it notes on a wall, and you just move things around into different categories until it's all about, prioritized. You got action items right there.
Right.
You don't have to think anymore. Jocko calls it extreme ownership. He's like, if you've planned for everything, then you don't have to think anymore. You just do.
That's right.
You don't have to think about what you're going to wear the next morning if you already did it the night before. You just lay them out. You don't even have to think. So it's that kind of thing. And the more you can put down on paper, the better. And that includes stuff way down the line. Just put it all down. That's my number one advice for anybody on that. And then the rest will kind of take care of itself as you go through the list.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for coming to talk through this. Again, people don't realize that these resources are all around us. And I think SCORE is probably something that's probably underutilized because they just don't realize it's there, and it's such a valuable tool for the community.
Yeah,
so thanks so much.
Especially here in this city.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Glad to be here.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the South Texas Power Lunch. We are here at the South Texas Business Lawyers, and our goal is to educate, support, and advise every small business and startup here in South Texas. And this podcast series is just another way that we hope that we can deliver to you a high-value education of all the different resources and exciting things going on in our community. We'll see you next time.